cold open question of the day, Brendon Kleen. Dominating himself, Deandre Ayton couldn't dominate the snow and the inclement weather and did make a Blazers game the other day due to said weather. Before I finish this question, I do want to say that having seen videos in Portland, having been someone who has my entire life lived in snow weather and oftentimes it gets crazy, I understand it's not always fun or safe to drive in. Preface that. But is this now the greatest reason ever, in your view, that a player hasn't appeared in an NBA game that functionally Deandre Ayton got an adult snow day?
I'm happy for the man. It is extra bad that this was supposed to be his return from a lengthy ankle sprain or I think it was knee injury. And, if you remember back to how his season ended last year in Phoenix, where there were some rumors that the locker room was not thrilled that he did not tough out a rib injury and try to take down Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. It's not looking good for our guy DA, but as far as setting his personal injury history aside, it's awesome. It has to be. I don't know of another similar thing I've ever heard of. I love the Blazers sideline reporter, though. I don't know if you saw this, Chris, but mid-game, fessing up to the fact that not only did she have to deal with pretty significant ice and snow in her driveway and outside of her home, she also had a broken ankle and is on crutches and a cast and just making DA look extra ridiculous for not being able to get through it because she had an actual injury on top of the weather. But the only other thing I could think of that was even close is the throwing of soup in your backyard once upon a time.
God,
but that was not directly he missed the game because of some sort of absence. But that's the same level of attention-grabbing, insane headline that feels like NBA Reddit made it up.
Yeah, I should have my Cleveland card revoked for forgetting about the soup.
You didn't forget, though. It's just it's a little bit of a different situation. So I don't know if it fully counts in this category, but do you have another one come to mind of a crazier or more hilarious absence?
No, because I feel this in the Midwest of my bones, right? This is someone moves to the Midwest and isn't used to driving in the snow and doesn't know how to do it, so they get their car stuck energy. I don't know. I don't know what kind of car Deandre Ayton drives, but he's from the Bahamas and went to college and started his professional career in Arizona. Does this guy just maybe have a nice sports car and with thin tires and maybe should just get something that can drive through snow?
Yes, but there was also reporting at the night of that the team sent representatives and they had tow crews out there. It was all hands on deck to excavate Deandre Ayton from his home that night, and it was literally how many Trailblazers does it take to get a 7-footer to the arena type of situation, and the answer was there's no amount that can do it.
All I'm saying is maybe the NBA PA should add to their rookie course, hey, breakout session. Anyone who's going to live in a cold market that isn't New York City, if you're going to maybe have to drive somewhere and can't get someone to drive you or take public transit, then hey, here's how to shovel a driveway. Here's how to use a snowblower. Here's how to make sure you have a car with 4-wheel drive so you could drive over the snow. I just feel this is basic adulting kind of thing where something wacky happened that we don't really know, but I feel this is kind of like Deandre Ayton. This is a very you kind of just gotta learn how to be more of an adult in the situation and have a car in a situation where hey, you know what, maybe pre-shovel your driveway a little bit, put some salt down, there's just some very basic things. You also have enough money where I think you could have hired someone to just get you. I just have lots of questions, and I'm just saying, executive committee, time to get back to some working class roots and get your cold weather guys ready for the winter months. It's all I'm saying. Not everyone can play in Miami.
A nice directory of who to hire to do it for you, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, get a Deandre Ayton, do some like Instagram ads, like you get like local NBA ads for like window companies or whatever. Just get one for someone who's gonna like snowplow your drive for you. This seems like a win-win for all parties, but this is for me clearly number one. This is incredible. All right, coming up on today's show, we've got a jam-packed episode for you. Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes lose to Ohio State. We got some pretty wild slop. We've got some Celtics Nuggets takeaways, WNBA free agency, and we're going to talk about Magic Sixers. A jam-packed episode of the Just Basketball Show coming your way right now. Welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. This is your twice-weekly look at all things basketball. That is women's, that is men's, that is the draft, that is trade slop, that is games, that is Deandre Ayton getting stuck in his house due to inclement weather. That is everything in under the sun here at the Just Basketball Show. Please, if you have not already, follow us on your podcast app platform of choice. 5 stars only. Hit subscribe on our Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. And I want to tell you about our friends at Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and the NFL. Sign up today with code JUSTBASKETBALL, and Thrive is going to match your first deposit up to $250. We're going to get into some slop, a bunch more shortly, but Brendon, we have to start with a game that wrapped just a little bit before we started recording. That is the Iowa Hawkeyes, the soon-to-not-be no longer ranked number 2 Iowa Hawkeyes, and Caitlin Clark losing in overtime to the Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus. A game that, in retrospect, I would have messed up our recording here. I should have made the 2-hour drive to get to that game. I have a lot of regret about this. I'm having some FOMO of not being in that game. Would have been worth it. The tickets, though, got really expensive, and until any ticket sponsor wants to work with us, we're available for business, and I would have gone as promo. I'm just throwing that out there. But Brendon, this game, Caitlin Clark has another 40-point game, but I came away looking at this and saying there's this one big thing for her in her college career that we think is going to end in a couple of months. It could at least end in a couple of months, that she has not done, and that is win a national championship. That is the one thing, if you look at her resume, that she could leave college that she hasn't done yet without doing.
Yep.
You look at this game, you look at how her Iowa team is not particularly athletic, how their zone defense was just easily picked apart and they had no counters, that they felt very reliant on her just kind of bailing them out over and over and over again against a good but I think not great Ohio State team. She is just not, this was already clear, I think, but she is not just going to be able to walk through the tournament and get that last thing. If she's going to get the one thing left to do on her resume in college, it's going to take everything she has.
Yeah, I just don't think the roster is good enough. I just think
it's not.
But like even if it took, like, I mean, she had 45 and 7 today, and like, okay, yeah. She had 7 turnovers and misses that off glass layup late in overtime, and then ends up getting the offensive rebound and gets to the line anyway. But there's just not much more she can do. Like, we've seen her do this. She was this way in the tournament. She obviously lost her low post companion in Monica Zanano to dental school, I believe. I actually think I've said dental school before, and somebody corrected me. Some sort of doctor school, and I just don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. And I watch other teams around the country, some newcomers, some teams she already had to go through and maybe wasn't successful against last year, and I don't see it. I don't think that they, like you said, are athletically equivalent, close to some of these other schools. I don't think that there's a second option here that is going to be able to step up. I mean, what happens if she's good about keeping this in check, but even foul trouble or an injury or any sort of small thing that could happen to her along the way? You're telling me, winning multiple rounds of a tournament, it sucks. I hate it. It would be awesome to see her win a national championship with Iowa, and that program has really needed her and got back on track because of her, but it doesn't seem like it's in the cards unless, a lot of the teams ahead of them falter for some reason.
But we should also just say, all due respect, all praise to Ohio State for their performance in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, they did everything possible. They even came very close to botching this game at the end of regulation, and I was really worried for them for a second. But what McMahon in particular did, 33 points, 12 boards, getting wherever she wants in this game. J.C. Sheldon with another really good game, 24, 3 and 7 for her. Their whole team, I think, really just coming up big over and over again, but really McMahon and Sheldon and Taylor as well with some timely buckets, including I think what was ultimately the game-tying one or game-go-ahead one in regulation at a certain point. They did everything they possibly could and took it to Iowa at moments where I think other teams would have just kind of gotten overwhelmed by Caitlin Clark, but they stuck to defensive principles really well, and they absolutely shredded that Iowa zone over and over and over again.
Yeah, I've always liked watching this Ohio State team. This program tends to just play a pretty pro. It feels like on both their men's and women's college programs tend to be a little closer to the pro game, and so I've always kind of gravitated toward it, and you see how it can come through. They're getting up. Everybody on the team seems to be able to shoot the three. The ball movement's good. They have size. It's like, okay, you can kind of see why they would be a team to take Iowa down, which brings me to my biggest point here. And we saw some footage, some very, investigative journalism being done on Twitter right after the game with the court rushing and a collision with Caitlin Clark. Ohio State fans need to act like they've been there before. These teams are pretty evenly matched. We know rankings don't matter in terms of team quality, but both teams were ranked. Ohio State had two more losses heading into this game than Iowa did, and they're conference rivals. Like, you can't act like winning this game just because Caitlin Clark is famous is like the end-all, be-all of your season. Like, you're a good team with a lot of talent. You could win a national championship. You can't be, jumping the gun on some Sunday morning Peacock game like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to the university. So that was a little weird. I think the fans need maybe this win will coach them, and now they have to surpass this one to storm the court again. But you got to save the storming for the moments that really matter. And unfortunately, beating a kind of mid Iowa team, even with Caitlin Clark's greatness, does not qualify for that level of reaction, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like funny that they're also number 2, and they're like, we kind of all kind of understand that they're kind of mid. They were, again, number 2 in the country and 17-1, but I think everyone kind of sees South Carolina as the far and away best team in the country right now, and it's kind of a cluster otherwise. Big Ten tournament, too, should be fun. Iowa's ranked in the top 25. Ohio State ranked in the top 25. Iowa ranked in the top 25. And it's also Michigan State got 2 votes in the top 25 poll last week. So you have a good conference there. More challenges ahead for Caitlin Clark and Iowa and Ohio State. I do hope we get these teams playing again. That to me would be fun if we could get another Ohio State Iowa matchup in the Big Ten tourney.
Yeah, looking forward to it. On the topic of college and on the topic of tickets, I went to see Bronny James on Saturday. Can we spend 5 minutes on this? Because
Brendon,
I was anxiously awaiting. Yeah, I was anxiously awaiting this game, and I'm hoping actually to go see the Stanford women's team next Friday. But this is like my last year of Pac-12 conference play for men's and women's to take advantage of. So I wanted to see USC, and then obviously Isaiah Collier, who is likely a top 10 pick in the NBA draft, is hurt right now, and Boogie Ellis, their veteran guard, also out. So USC got stomped. But it was an interesting kind of test for Bronny in particular because they basically started running him at point with those injuries. And what ASU did was basically said, all right, you guys are inexperienced, you're veteran decision maker, and your star guard are on the bench, and you're playing this athletic, not really a point guard, prodigy kid on as your ball handler. We're gonna run like a zone press from minute 1 to minute 40. And they couldn't break it. Bronny was in hell a little bit. They had multiple turnovers of not being able to cross the timeline in time. They were getting the ball deflected because they just couldn't advance it, whatever. But you watched him the other night, and you were texting me, I think, the night that they were on ESPN, and LeBron was kind of trying to look around the reporters at what was going on. And it feels like we're on the same page here, which is he may go to the NBA. I don't think he's an NBA player right now. And it's just very weird, polar opposite kind of pulling him in both directions thing here, where it's like developmentally, I actually think he could be a pretty good pro. But I think he'd be the best pro he can be if he stays. But you may have heard his dad is the most famous athlete in the world potentially, and already is putting pressure on other NBA teams to draft him in the potential to get LeBron. So that is not going to work in his best interest, I think, developmentally. It's very weird, and I think we overlook the dude as a basketball player when we're kind of getting caught up in all the drama and the gossip of all of it. It's a guy who needs time. It's a guy who is not a point guard, but is the size of a point guard and needs a lot of work on his game, I think.
Yeah. On top of that, he has been through something health-wise incredibly severe. Maybe just that adds on time to this. He's playing. That speaks to more of where he's at than anything we could say here. But it's important, I think, to note that it's also just okay if it takes time. But if the Lakers, to make him happy, if the Cavs, in an attempt to woo LeBron back home, are we'll use a first-round pick on Bronny in what is considered a bad draft, and he can play with the G League a bunch and travel to some road trips, and we do that, and we get LeBron back, teams would jump on that, and that's also not good. I want to see him succeed because I think it would be cool if he could just find his own footing. It's obviously very odd. There's not really... I don't know. Social media has made this different. He's kind of a big social media star in his own way already, and I don't think Michael Jordan's kids are like that. I mean, the most I see from Michael Jordan's kids is that
talented.
And then one of them is now marrying Larsa Pippen, which is just very weird. Just that whole thing is just very weird. Bronny's it's a little more just uncomfortable in the sense that he's clearly just in this weird zone that there's not really a way for us to look at it. But he doesn't, he's starting, and that's cool, and he physically looks developed for his size. But you're right, he's not a point guard, but he's point guard height. And there's all these...
Yeah, I mean, he's 6'4", his length isn't... I think it's probably a plus wingspan type of thing, but he's not 7'2" wingspan at 6'4", like he's Talen Horton-Tucker or something. He just is sort of a small guy, and that frame, the limitations of that are pretty heightened, I think, in the modern era of the NBA. You have to be able to shoot or be a really, really versatile kind of switchable defender. It's not to say he can't become any of those things, but it's a unique kind of archetype that he's trying to work himself into, and I think that's mostly why I say he needs time. I agree. Physically, I mean, he could go play Summer League this year if he were to get drafted, and I'm sure he'd have flashes. He's there athletically. It's more of just kind of what is he going to be. I think he's a really good passer. He was making some reads, just kind of drop passes in the pick and roll or finding cutters, and he really gets hyped off that stuff in a way that obviously you can tell the family he comes from. But yeah, it's going to be interesting kind of what he becomes, and I hope it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of transactions and whatever. And I don't personally feel like LeBron would allow it to. I do think he cares about this stuff, and he's even kind of, with the SI story last year and whatever, kind of tried to maybe back a little bit off of the pressure and everything of we're all going to play together and it's all going to be up to me and this and that. And I think he's kind of, starting to, it's becoming more real, and he's taking his hands off the wheel a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, this is actually a funny comp, and I totally didn't plan this, but I actually was trying to think of who is he? What could he be in the NBA? And Dejounte Murray actually did come to mind. Not perfect. I think he's a little bit more physical than Dejounte, a little bulkier, but
Marcus Smart's the body type comp I've seen. That makes the most sense to me.
Sure, Marcus is bigger,
Yeah.
But yeah, body type. Sure, Dejounte's, like I said, he's a little scrawnier, but in terms of play style, it's a point guard who doesn't defend 1 through probably 1, 2, and 3s maybe, and his passing is better than his shooting. that was sort of where my head was at. But yeah, it's I guess we can pivot to Dejounte. But the Bronny stuff is going to be very fascinating, especially because this team's not great. So, are they even going to make the tournament? He's on a team with another lottery prospect. It's a very, very weird situation. And you mentioned he's starting. I don't know how long that lasts, because when those guys get back, I think he'll be right back to the bench, and we'll have even less to draw from, and so will NBA teams as far as what he's going to be.
It's going to get weird with him, and that's not great. All right, Dejounte Murray. Very clutch of you, Brendan, to sneak in that little segue organically for us there. So Chris Haynes last week reported that the Milwaukee Bucks are among multiple teams who are registering interest in trading for Atlanta Hawks star Dejounte Murray. League sources tell NBA and TNT and at Bleacher Report. Two things about this, Brendan. Number one, Chris Haynes is, again, very plugged into the Bucks. He's tight with Dame. He is, I think, connected via, it's like a sister-in-law or something that is... Isn't there there's some connection to Giannis now, if I remember correctly? There's all
Giannis's wife is a member of Chris Haynes' wife's family, I believe, is how that connection is. Yeah.
Okay. That's one part of this. Number two, what? Like what? Excuse me, Milwaukee Bucks. I don't quite understand this. You can make different permutations of this trade. Murray's obviously very talented. I get some of the logic in theory. I just don't quite understand what's really... this doesn't seem really realistic or grounded in reality to me, and I don't really understand what trading for him would accomplish, considering what their avenues are to making such a deal.
Yeah, agreed. And we can run through that quick, right? You and I were texting about it. It's like, okay, you can get there salary-wise with Portis, Beauchamp, and whatever. Because right now, DeJounte is only making about $17, $18 million. So acquiring him trade-wise, you don't need as much salary as the typical all-star caliber guard you might be targeting. Maybe that's why they're interested. But as you said when we were texting about that, then they're even thinner, right? So, okay, that's not great. And then maybe it's Middleton. As you know, I see Chris Middleton as the MVP of the NBA, so I would not ever advocate for trading him. But on a more less jokey level, he's too fundamentally important to their team, and adding another small guard doesn't make a lot of sense if you're getting rid of your only real wing who is a two-way player. But it did get me thinking about something that I believe Zach Lowe brought up, which is... I think was related to the Lakers, Chris, in their DeJounte pursuit of, because DeJounte has kind of a smaller salary, potentially combining him with, I think Zach Lowe brought up Bogdan Bogdanovic, but really you could take your pick of any number of Bucks or Hawks role players on top of Murray. And I guess that was the closest I could get to this making sense, was those other role players. The Hawks might be a little more excited about getting off of the salary of those guys, and that might feel to them like value in a trade that could make up for the fact that the Bucks, obviously, with the picks that they've sent out for in a number of trades and their limited roster pieces, probably can't match what other teams could. If it's like, hey, we'll take, I don't know, DeAndre Hunter off your hands, or Clint Capella. I don't know if either one of those players fit, but you get my point. That was the closest I could get to it, but I really don't know what this rumor was for outside of maybe somebody on the Bucks wanting to show somebody else on the Bucks that they're kind of trying to improve the team, whether that's the players wanting Murray and putting that out there, or the management saying, hey, we're trying to upgrade Dame, we're trying to upgrade Giannis. Don't worry, we're not ignoring you. But it was very bizarre, no matter how you slice it, and I don't think it's going to happen.
No, there's no reason this should happen, and have whoever wants this, have they watched the Atlanta Hawks enough to know that Murray as your number two guard next to a ball-dominant guard is a clunky fit and imperfect?
Yeah. It's a weird one. I guess you could probably sell him and could just sell the trade as Murray is going to rediscover some of his point of attack defensive form. The Bucks structure is maybe the best place to do that, more so than other places. And they really only truly do need him to be a kind of point guard defender, whereas other teams might switch more and other teams might ask him to guard bigger guys, which he's not necessarily up to. I don't hate his defensive fit, but yeah, the offensive fit is wacky, and it just doesn't feel like this is what they need at all. They need size, they need depth, they need defense, kind of much more than just one position, and they don't need to be spending that much for it. So it would be an even more all-in move when that feels like the other direction from what they need to be doing. So I honestly hope they don't do this. Forget what might happen. I think this would be a real mistake.
Yeah, like this is a team that got Jake Crowder back in 2024, and it was like a big deal for their depth. That you don't.
Yeah, they need more Jake Crowders, right?
Yeah, they need more like vets who they can at least try. They don't need, and they need more bodies. They don't need like another star, and then you're scraping even. Then like Thanasis is going to end up having to play like actual minutes, and then like what are we doing here? You've completely lost yourself in the sauce if you get to that point. Murray still feels to me, Brendan, like the biggest name, so to speak, that's left to be traded on this market. I can't figure out like what this is going to look like. This just makes it more. Maybe this is just like a Hawks leverage play to drive up value and be like, see, there is another team interested with whoever they're talking to. You know, Lord knows it's
or Clutch.
This is lying.
Clutch just trying to kind of increase the price or direct him where he wants to go. You never know. It's so out of nowhere that it's hard to even parse like the slop machinations of it. You know, usually you and I have been around this stuff long enough where it's like, okay, that leak came for this reason from this party. I don't even know where to trace that part of it. So I guess we need more info before we can say anything here.
Bingo. All right, let's move on to Celtics Nuggets, a possible NBA Finals preview. Nuggets win, the first team all year to beat Boston in Boston. Brett, I think first and foremost, we'll get into Jamal Murray, we'll get into Jason Tatum, we'll get into Jokic. We'll look ahead a little bit. This felt like a playoff game, and when I get two teams at this level playing in the regular season, this is the energy I want. When you get teams of this caliber playing, in a random game in January, I want this energy brought to it. It elevates it in such a big way.
We're headed into, I don't know if you even caught this. I don't know how many people watching or listening caught this. We're headed into rivalry week again in the NBA. Did you have it circled on your calendar?
You know,
did you notice?
You missed it. I got to tell you, the NBA, love basketball, love the NBA. Often very bad at these marketing initiatives that like don't actually mean anything.
Yeah. Well, agreed. So my point was going to be that is not getting attention and kind of doesn't deserve it. It's something that no one really asked for. This past week in the NBA that we're recapping right now was absolutely incredible. It was an amazing week. It felt like day by day almost breaking that might have been the best game of the season. On Tuesday alone, we got two candidates for that with the MVP showdown and then Thunder Clippers, which was maybe still my favorite game of the season so far. Then we got an awesome Thunder Jazz game kind of to end the Jazz winning streak. We've gotten, the last Sunday, we got the Dame Lillard Dame time over Sacramento at home to beat them in a comeback. The Suns look back a little bit, and that's been a fun storyline, I think, in the Western Conference as they get back on track, and then this game on Friday night. So it feels like we're kind of getting more and more of these, and this one was absolutely a playoff environment. I agree completely. And you have a note in here that Michael Malone coached like it was a playoff game. What, where did you feel like that came through? Because I could follow you, but I want you to tell me because I didn't think of it that exact way.
I just felt, you look at what he said post-game and the way he treated the game and the way he was talking about the performance of his team. And I think also just look at the way that he was pretty ruthless in how he managed minutes and how he managed rotations. 7 guys played actual minutes in this game. Mm-hmm. Gordon played 42, MPJ played 37, Jokic played 38, Murray played 37, KCP played 37. Your starters played heavy minutes. Peyton Watson, who I adore, did not shoot well in this game, but got 21 minutes. Reggie Jackson got 21 minutes. Christian Braun, who was good for them in the finals last year and good for them in the playoffs in their whole title run, got 5 minutes in this game.
Not good enough for you to remember his name.
Brown. Darn it. Justin Holiday, another guy who's gotten some minutes for them on the year, plays 3 minutes. He said, these are the 7 guys I want to roll with going into battle. And he just said, we're going to lean on Jokic. We're going to lean on what we know makes us great. And we're going to go for the win. Other teams might have said, okay, we're going to extend Brown's minutes to his normal allotment. We're going to sneak Zeke Naji minutes because we're thinking of in the future we're going to get a little Jokic time off. We're going to give one of these other guys we have on this roster that we like just some minutes in this environment to get their feet wet a little bit. He just went for it. Michael Malone just said, I'm going for this win.
Yeah.
That's a playoff type coaching, is just going for the allotment of minutes in that specific way. That to me is what I meant by that.
Absolutely. And I think the center spot is maybe where I'm most intrigued, because this is the whole plot line for the Nuggets this year, right? Is can they get a playoff rotation? Can they cobble together enough young guys, or do they need to look at a trade or a buyout player? What is 6 through 8 going to look like? Because that starting lineup is the most cohesive, most balanced, best starting unit in basketball. I think they still have that crown, but that can't be enough. And the center spot gets a lot of attention because Zeke Naji was a first-round pick of theirs, and he's just never been able to stick. I just think you kind of need to turn the page on that. DeAndre Jordan, nobody, for understandable reasons, of course, trusts him to be any sort of minutes player in a postseason environment, even if it's 5 to 10. I don't think you're still panicked. And so I just think it's kind of funny. This game was one of the first ones where Michael Malone reminded us what we watched the damn team do from, April to June last year, which was that they didn't play anybody like that at center. They played Aaron Gordon as their backup center. And I was kind of workshopping a Peyton Watson is more valuable to Denver than Christian Braun take, and then Michael Malone just sort of beat everybody to the punch and just proved it here because he's big. And that's this team's identity, but more importantly, that's the ingredient you're going to need most often against other teams. And Christian Braun, Reggie Jackson is kind of ahead of him in the rotation because he's more of a point guard. He maybe because he's a vet, maybe because he can create his own shot a little easier, maybe because he's more similar to Murray. I mean, we can disagree about if maybe that should be the case, but they're duplicative. So, okay, that means Peyton Watson kind of slides into that spot. And I want to throw this to you because, yeah, he didn't make shots the other night, but I think you can just see the value with his help defense, with his physicality, his rebounding, his transition scoring, his cutting. He's just better than Jeff Green, right? He's better than the guy who was playing that role for them in last year's postseason already.
I think he is better. I think there's more volatility because he's younger, as I think the differentiator. Jeff Green was exactly what you knew he was going to be night in and night out because he's been around for so long and kind of understands exactly what he is and does exactly what it is. Watson is still in that searching for his limits phase and searching for what he is phase. And I think there is just a little bit of volatility, a little bit of up and down that comes from that. But I mean, the fact that he's taking 6 threes, he only makes the one. But Brendan, I like the fact that Peyton Watson is out here taking 6 threes in a big game. It shows you that he has confidence. It shows you that he's willing to fail, which is, to me, like half the battle for these young guys sometimes is them being willing to fail and mess up in these big moments. It's 100% a big deal.
And he's shooting 34% from deep and 71% from the line this season. So I think he's at the threshold of what he needs to be. But yeah, I guess bigger picture on this game too, outside of the Nuggets rotation and some of that stuff, I just think this game was a reminder that the Nuggets are unguardable. I mean,
they are.
Boston has gotten a lot of credit for their defensive craziness and the schemes. And like, I think Caitlin Cooper, who we had on the show, who's mostly a Pacers writer, but she tweeted this clip that went viral a couple weeks ago about how they play man until the ball crosses this point in the court and then it switches to zone, and they're crazy. They're super well coached. They're versatile. It didn't really matter. The Nuggets ability to move the ball and play off of one another and cut. It's just unstoppable when it's working.
Boston also, I think, you saw some parts of this game where they just did not have an answer for Jokic. And does anyone really have an answer for Jokic? No. Ultimately, no one really has an answer for the big Serbian guy who is here to do a job and do it really well. But it didn't matter, if they put Al Horford on him, if they used Porzingis on him, if they were physical with him, if they were letting him go one-on-one and containing the ball movement, if they threw double. It didn't matter what they did. Jokic ate them alive. Jack Maloney over at CBS did a rundown of his baskets. I'm not going to read the list, but you can go find this at CBS. The variation that he had in that game was incredible. The variation he had in terms of what he was doing and what he was showcasing in that game, Brendan, was every single tool you have in your toolbox. And if you look at his shot chart, it's green everywhere on the fucking floor. What are you supposed to do? This guy was efficient in every single place, and it just Boston has this great defense. It is varied. It is all of these things. They have the size. It hit the interior defense. Porzingis, to his credit, was physical and is battling and is doing all the stuff you would have wanted from him in this new role for him. Jokic is just not good. If these teams play in the finals, Jokic is probably just gonna do this because he's that damn good.
Yeah, I actually thought Porzingis in the post was pretty steady defensively. I thought he was able to not get bowled over, not kind of give space and contest and everything else, but those kind of fall away, hip or shoulder into the chest of the defender, and then it's not even like a Dirk fadeaway. It's just use that tiny amount of space and get the ball up, and now there's no contest because that guy, you just pushed him 2 feet back. It's unguardable, and Jokic was able to use that to his advantage. But I also think the important thing here was Jokic was aggressive. This was a playoff game to me, too, because Jokic brought the scoring mentality that we finally saw him really embrace during their championship run last year. That's not something he does every night. And I actually thought his turnovers have been way down this year, which is very impressive considering how much he has to do for them. And we think of these guys as finished products so often, and he's not. But in this game, 2 of his 4 turnovers were just straight up not being ready for a double team in the post. And so he wasn't even perfect. And yet he's still at 34, 12, and 9. And I think that really happens because he's looking to score. He came into the game knowing, whether it was that they thought they could take advantage of the Porzingis matchup or they knew Boston's length and athleticism was going to pose a problem for some of these other guys like Gordon. I don't know, but he did that, and obviously it worked. The other thing I was noticing in this game, though, is, or really I've just honestly kind of keyed into this season, maybe because we all kind of learned how to watch this team last year, is the passing from Murray to Jokic. Do you it's insane if you really zoom in on it while you're watching them. The awful angles and no man's land positions that Murray will just chuck it to Jokic like a hot potato in. Jokic will just kind of be strolling around 2 feet inside the foul line with 3 guys defensively in the paint, and Murray's all right, buddy, it's yours. And he'll just make something happen. It's this was the best that I've seen them look all season, and it feels when they're playing like this, it's just... I mean, look, Boston they lost by 2. We're making it sound like it was a blowout, so I guess we can go to them, and they did plenty of good things too, but I don't know what you do about this Nuggets team when they're playing like this.
Yeah, I mean, Murray at 35, and it's just a reminder of what the upside he can offer and how he can just be a damn flamethrower, doing his best Leonardo DiCaprio at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood act and just torching people against a team with really good defensive guards. It does not matter that this team has Derek White and Drew Holiday and all these big wings. It's just okay, I can wiggle my way into 35 and in a game that we win by 2, and every point I'm going to have is matter. And he's a big... Jamal Murray is a big game player. He just is a big game, big moment guy.
He makes the shots that every defense intentionally gives you, right?
Bingo.
He's just thank you. Awesome. I'll take a weird one-legged, off-balance 14-footer along the baseline. Great. Thank you. Love it. And I'll make 15 of 21 shots, and I'll beat you. Like, it's insane. But what did you like from Boston? Because, they were in this until the very end, and again, we're kind of making it sound like they got crushed. They absolutely didn't.
I think what you said about Porzingis was kind of the first thing. That was the number one thing I was looking at in this game, is just how would Boston defend Porzingis, defend Jokic, and how would Porzingis factor into that? How would he handle the physicality? How would he do in that kind of situation? He did about as well as I think he could have wanted. Jokic just made a ton of tough shots. There's nothing to really feel bad about it. They were still pretty efficient. They were still, I think overall, as far as Boston goes, like they got a ton of points. They did a really good job of just not turning the ball over, which I think is a big reason why, if you look at this game, why this game is as close as it was, considering some other things that did not go right. They just did not make mistakes and give the Nuggets free opportunities on the break. That, to me, is kind of where I start. I think the outline of it is good. I think, Brendan, the thing that I kept going to when I was thinking about this game and prepping for our show today was I wanted they win this game if Jason Tatum is like 5% better. Like, that's kind of where I kind of came down on, and it's like, okay, they still put up a good offensive efficiency. They didn't turn the ball over. They were, they didn't shoot it particularly well everywhere, but they took care of the ball so well and had some spots on the floor that did okay where it did work.
Are you just saying Tatum wasn't good enough because he missed shots?
But I'm not even. I think the decision making at times was very Jason Tatum-y, and where I felt he forced a couple looks here and there, where I just wanted a slightly better look. But it is just like sometimes you don't make enough shots in and like that's a difference in a really close game. The other part of it, I think, too, is just Boston was also good in the times they. Boston also was, to their credit, I think, really good as much as they could be in a game where neither team really shot a lot at the rim, which was kind of a weird quirk of this game. Did well enough at the rim and slightly more opportunities, I think, to keep this game close. Like there's a couple little things I think they would probably like to do back, but the Tatum thing is probably just a couple two decisions that go a different way. He makes a couple more shots. He was also kind of hard on himself if you saw some of the comments after the game. So I don't think he was particularly pleased with how he played in this moment either.
There was 1 3 he took on the right wing, I believe, in the fourth quarter, definitely the second half, where he had an open path to the basket and the game was kind of, really tight. And then the last shot, right, where he fades away against, I don't remember who was guarding him. I want to say KCP in that, basically the final real offensive opportunity they had. And to me, it's just sort of, at a certain point, that's what he is,
Yeah.
And they you can look at all, like they even had on the ESPN broadcast that he was like leading the NBA in the most layups and dunks off of drives this season. And it's funny, and obviously there's always, every single Celtics game, you can go on any social media platform where people are talking about basketball, and there will be a highlight of Tatum driving to the basket, getting an and one or some sort of ferocious dunk or tough layup, and it'll be like, why can't he play this way all the time? It's like, well, yeah, I don't know. Great question. But, like, that's what he is. That's what they are. And I don't know really what else there is to say about it, And look, he's not, like, 36, so maybe there is some later portion of his career where that eventually does click for him. But I guess I just have a hard time picking at it when, again, they've been so good this year, and they brought in some of these players specifically to balance him in a way that I think has worked. A couple of the things I would say is good, though, from them. Mm-hmm. Actually, due to the point we were making about Murray, where it's like you kind of just got to take what he gives. I thought Brown did a pretty decent job playing him physically, bumping him off his spots, not allowing him just straight paths to the basket all that often. It's crazy to say that about somebody who was 12 of 14 from 2, but I actually do think Brown did a decent job there. And then I think the start Porzingis has to get attention. Mm-hmm. The fact, I think he had 12 points in the first quarter, and I think in a future, if it's a finals matchup or whatever else, Porzingis as a shooter making, even if it's not Jokic, but especially when it is Jokic guarding him, have to close out and close that distance and staying committed to that. And then when it isn't Jokic, staying committed to getting the ball to Porzingis in the post and really, really, really attacking that matchup. I think that's what I would anticipate Joe Mazzulla would focus on, home in on in a game plan if they were to maybe next time they play in the regular season, but definitely in a playoffs environment, because that worked. I didn't go watch beat by beat of why they went away from it, but Porzingis only had 9 points the rest of the way. That felt like meat on the bone there that really could make Denver uncomfortable defensively.
Yeah, I agree. And Denver is going to have some issues, I think, against what Boston does if these teams play in the finals. If this is what our finals matchup is, Porzingis and what he does, the kind of starts he can get off of, plus the big wings, even if it's this version that where I personally would like just a little more variation in the way they attack, just a couple more mid-rangers, a couple more drives to the rim, get some more free throws out of this team. I think there's some meat on that bone. But even if they don't change anything and this is the recipe, it's a pretty good run at what Denver. It's going to be a pretty tight, hard run at what Denver is and what Denver is not on defense, right? Like, it's going to stretch them. It's going to put Murray in uncomfortable positions and wear him out. It's gonna really test the upper limits of what KCP is as your main wing defender in certain moments. Like, it is a real test for Denver. Frankly, like, this win just speaks really well. The fact that Denver is the team to go in and beat Boston and survive the Porzingis thing and we're so competitive against it and handled this well. That just speaks to, I think, how good Denver is, that they went in and handled a lot of what did go right for Boston and are the first team to beat Boston in Boston all year. That tells you, I think, the quality that Denver has, even if we're, like, do they need to make a trade to upgrade on Reggie Jackson? Should Brown just play? Like, even if there are these questions about them, the quality of that team is just so high.
No, I think you said it. I'll just shout out one more aspect of how much closer to the spring of 2023 form they looked to be in a season where their effort has fluctuated and their health has fluctuated. I thought MPJ's defense was pretty damn good yesterday, and that's another thing that will need to be there against Boston or a lot of other high championship caliber teams, and that's a big reason they were able to get through those playoff rounds last year. So salute to him for bringing it. And he had a cold shooting first half and was still able to stay engaged on that end and make a big impact. And that's what we saw him do when his shot wasn't always falling last year too. So yeah, this was a super impressive game and one of the better ones, I think, of the year for sure.
Yeah, I think this I think is my favorite regular season game of the year so far.
Can't argue number one. I'll go. I'm a big Thunder stan, so I'm always going to default there. But
yeah. Before we go on to our WNBA free agency look ahead, Brendan, who would you favor in the finals matchups between these two teams right now?
The Nuggets.
Same.
I mean, hard to say anything else after they went on the road and did this, but even just generally speaking, I think it's an offense league. And if your offense has solutions for more things and you're less guardable, I'm going to favor you. And it's going to take a lot for me to feel like anybody has a better offense than the Nuggets. I mean, forget this season, for like the next 5 years, I feels like.
Yeah, on that note, I agree with you too. I think we got to stop saying like the most efficient offense. Like I understand like statistically we're getting into this era where offenses are like this is the best offense in NBA history. The best offense in like recent NBA history, it's either the KD Warriors or this Nuggets team. And I know the Kings had higher offensive efficiencies and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Denver's 7th in offense right now. No, they're not. You know what I mean?
Not. Like, yeah, like they're not. Like, I get it. This is the best. That's the offense that if I'm an opposing head coach and I'm an opposing team, that's the offense that freaks me out the most if I'm game planning for them.
Yeah. No and Aaron Gordon was bad on offense in this game, and it's like it didn't even matter.
No, they still had like an above average offensive efficiency, and they're like getting like. Bleh. I do just want them, Brennan. I want them to make I want one trade. I don't know if it's like, should they go weird and go like a Jordan Clarkson? Should they just get like a veteran point guard that's better than Reggie Jackson? I just want one Nuggets trade on the peripheral that can come in and like superpower this up another level.
I'm all for it. They don't have a lot of salary.
No, they do not. That they do not. All right, let's go to WNBA free agency questions. We're going to do 5 big WNBA free agency questions. We'll rip through these a little bit. The moratorium for free agency is up, I believe. Yeah, it's up. I have that date right, Brendan. Sunday, as we're recording this, we're ready to go. We're ready to rock. Question number 1, Brendon Kleen. What happens with Jonquel Jones? And what else on top of that do the Liberty do with some concern over Marie Johannes' status and some other things and their super team status? This, to me, is if Jonquel Jones decides to go elsewhere, this is already like the idea that there's a clear number 2 to the Aces number 1, I think, goes out the window. I think a lot is riding on Jonquel Jones even more than some other players we're going to get to.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to refer to this many times during this little preview, and we'll check back in because the moratorium is really long in the WNBA. It lasts all the way until February 1st, so things will kind of trickle. It's not the big flood like it is in the NBA, but the Next did a predictions piece, and they obviously are super plugged in and cover the whole league and do a good job of it. And going down the list, they have their Neko Gumake prediction, Brianna Stewart, and then third is Jonquel Jones. And she was the first player after those top 2, former MVP franchise players in Agumake and Stewie, where there was actually some split among the Next staff of where the player would go. They got like 11, 12 votes for returning to New York, but then Atlanta and Los Angeles popped up here, which at least tells me that we're not crazy to imagine a world in which she does not come back. Honestly, though, the thing that makes me the most certain she would is that they need her so damn badly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you do whatever you possibly can. I know that there are money limits. It's a salary cap sport like they all are. But, like, do you want to, can we help you find a nice, like, dog sitting company in Brooklyn? Do you want, like, catering from a different restaurant than maybe we did last year? Could we, hook you up with like whatever? They're
sponsored by Webull. Can we get a deep and varied portfolio of investments for Jonquel Jones?
Yeah. Can she take an off-season tour with the size to wherever it is that they venture around the world with their various business deals and get Jonquel involved? Like, whatever it takes, because I mean, their season flipped when she flipped, and they can't win the championship without her. So I think she has to go back. I think that they have to do whatever they possibly can, even if that means, for instance, moving on from other players, or I don't know. But they're not forget it, super team. They're not a title really top level threat without her.
There's no clear number 2 in the WNBA if Jonquel Jones leaves the Liberty, I think is where I end up with that. And there might still be a very large gap. I think if the finals last year taught us anything, is that the Aces are here and everyone else is a little bit down the pecking order. All right, question number 2. Brenda, what happens with Elena Delle Donne?
Well, I guess where I look, and we talked about this a little bit when the news broke in a previous episode that she was very likely to explore leaving, is I just go to teams that need offense, right? Because the reality is she is not a huge difference maker defensively. Even at her peak, she was not that. She's older now. She's had injury problems. I don't think you want to put her in a situation where she's trying to kind of lift a young developing team up and having to do too much. You don't want her on an older team where, injuries happen and suddenly she's lifting too much. So I know we kind of threw this out more from a geographical standpoint and her ties to the Northeast and everything else, but the Sun make a lot of sense to me. Connecticut makes a lot of sense to me in that we'll talk about another player momentarily who might end up being one of the bigger free agents that changes teams as well, and their center, Brianna Jones. I think their team is best when Alyssa Thomas is playing small. She was an MVP candidate, damn near won the MVP award playing that position for them after Jones got hurt last year. And it's a lot easier to fill in a smaller team like that when you have a big scoring forward like Delle Donne They need offense. They need scoring. Tiffany Hayes has retired. That's the best match I can think of for her because their offense was 4th in the NBA, and I think that's or in the WNBA, and I think that's where they've not ever been able to get over the hump, and she would do a lot to get them over that hump, I think, and really make them an even more formidable threat to that top 2 in the league.
You referenced it earlier. The Next has in their preview. That was the overwhelming winner, was the Connecticut Sun for her. Washington, number 2, Indiana, Vegas, New York, and Seattle all tied. Otherwise, the real heel move would be Aces, just for like lulls, but the Sun make a lot of sense. And it would be, and also like considering her college career path and like everything, that would be kind of like a fitting full circle part of this as well. Not just like there would be something very fitting about her like going back to somewhere that she didn't end up in before she ended up as one of the best pros of the last 10 years. So she is still she's like 14 in their poll, which I don't really know what that means, but
yeah, I was wondering the same thing. I think it might just be random because like Diamond DeShields is above her and like no. Yeah. So I think it might just be a random list. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't even realize she was on here when I was first scrolling until you said that, and I'm like, okay, how far down? But no, I think it's yeah, I mean, look, I think the other thing too is going to a team
Command
where,
F, Brendan. Just Command F, exactly. And you type
no,
in.
literally, I did. Command F Elena was where I was at while you were talking. I just think too, like you also, to my point about you don't want to go somewhere too young or too old. Like, yeah, Alyssa Thomas is a complete dog. I don't know how she never misses time. She acts like surgery is not even a significant thing. She's a superhuman. But like DeWanna Bonner is like about to be 37. That team is maybe not quite as deep as you would want, but it's at least somewhere where game to game she wouldn't be required to do so much. You know, she's going to a team with an MVP candidate. That does a lot to make it, I think, different than the Mystics where we were talking last year. Are they a dark horse? Are they a dark horse? And it ended up being that she wasn't quite as great as she used to be, 4 or 5 years ago when she was winning MVP awards, and then the rest of the team wasn't able to step up in her place. So I think Connecticut gives her a little more of that. It's not perfect, but in a league where, the talent tends to consolidate, it might be her best chance.
Bingo. All right, let's go on to our next question. Brennan, that's what happens with Skylar Diggins-Smith. I think the name point guard on the WNBA free agency market, I think certainly someone who you would know this better than me because she was in your backyard, I think was pretty unhappy, to say the least, with where she has been at with the Mercury the last couple seasons. And I think there's some interesting places for her to go. To me, the Sun are one of them as well. If she could end up there, that would make some sense to me. I could see Chicago making sense. The Minnesota option makes a lot of sense to me as well if she wanted to go there. But this is someone that I think can go on this market and be a real difference maker for a team that wants to take next up. Is she going to make this help a team on her own necessarily become a title contender and give us another team that we can speculate about pushing the Aces? I don't know if I'm there with her, but I do think that she is someone that is going to go to wherever she ends up. She is going to go make a team much better and much more composed when she goes wherever she's going to go next.
Absolutely. My instinct has always been Atlanta, but then, they didn't show up on her guesses on this next preview. So now I'm kind of checking myself a little bit. I have their cap sheet up. They have almost $617,000 in cap space. They have only a couple of protected contracts in Cheyenne Parker and Alicia Gray. They have Ari McDonald and Haley Jones, who they've drafted in recent years, and A.D. Durr, who came in and kind of rejuvenated their career in Atlanta, but none of those players are like cornerstones of your franchise by any means. I mean, this is a team that I think the building blocks are Howard, Gray, and maybe you would say Parker, but even then, she's a vet. That's not a long-term answer either. So I'm struggling to see why Skylar couldn't go to the Dream and slot right in and provide them some stability. This is a team that blew leads frequently, that was a mess down the stretch of close games a lot of the time, turning the ball over and not having a lot of plan and asking Ryan Howard especially to do way too much as a ball handler and creator that she's maybe never going to do, but definitely not ready for right now. So I still tend to think Atlanta, but I'm kind of feeling like I'm going crazy that the experts here did not peg her there, and Chicago was the other high vote getter in addition to your idea of Connecticut.
where are you at on her? If it's L.A. or Minnesota or Seattle, like where are you at on some of these other options? It feels to me like she could fit a bunch of different places to varying degrees what it would mean. But I think there are just like a lot of good fits for her if you want to fan cast her at a bunch of different spots.
Yeah, she could fit anywhere. I mean, the Sparks, we just heard that they're going to move on from Jordan Canada in a sign-in trade likely, and she was a breakout player for them. Finally was able to get her offense to an efficient enough place that, you're talking about, a borderline all-star caliber player with how great her point-of-attack defense is, her transition scoring. They don't want her for some reason, or it doesn't make sense to keep her. Jasmine Thomas, who was on their team last year, just retired and is joining the Dallas Wings front office, so LA makes perfect sense. Look, she's a guard who can shoot, plays solid point-of-attack defense, and is unselfish. So, yeah, she fits anywhere. So it's just a matter of positionally which teams kind of need a lead ball handler. Not everybody does. But if you have that opening in your roster, you should probably explore signing Skylar Tiggins-Smith.
Yeah, she's going to be good. That's going to be a very fun domino to see where that ends up. All right. Question number 4. Brennan, can a team or will a team come out of nowhere and make a big splash? Is there a team we're not thinking about? Is there a team that we're unsure about where they're at? Is there someone that's going to come out of nowhere and do something aggressive or at least push through something aggressive even if it doesn't totally work out?
Yeah, this is always hard in a 12-team league, right? There's not a lot of surprises or options for players and teams and movement like that. I guess the thing that I would maybe kind of throw out that is going to be the curveball in this season for the W is that it's an Olympic year. And so we're going to see the prioritization rules, which have been pretty controversial. I think, understandable from a league standpoint. What those rules do is they make you be on your WNBA team at a certain time for a certain amount of time so that your team knows if they're signing you, they have you, and the league knows. If you're on a roster, you're on a roster. Not, okay, I'm playing on the Mystics, for instance, but then I have to go away for 2 months because my national team I've signed a contract with them to play for the Olympics and all these camps and all these exhibitions and everything else. So players, whether they're international or in some cases American players who have gotten in with international teams of other countries, if those players can't commit to being here for the full season, they might just not play in the league this year and go play in the Olympics and whatever other various kind of things around that. So that's, I think, the other thing I'm watching. Gabby Williams is a name like that, and there's obviously plenty of international players. We basically saw Emma Mieseman, who was huge for the Mystics once upon a time, and the Sky when they won in 2021. She barely had a WNBA career because of a lot of this. So that's kind of the domino that I think we'll have to see kind of which way it falls.
Jackie Powell just wrote a really good story about this, I think, at Yahoo that people should go check out as well. My ID here is Brennan, I stole this from our friend Sabrina Merchant from The Athletic. Indiana Fever. Let's get weird. Let's spend some money. Let's try to be aggressive. Like, Satu Sabale would be a dream. I think she probably just ends up back in Dallas. Also, I think someone with international basketball possibilities, which is complicated for this year. But I want them to just go try to find a star wing. Can they get Kalia Copper from Chicago? Can they, can you make a trade for somebody else? DeWanna Bonner, can you make a call on her and see if we could get there? Just go get, or at least attempt to go get a Sabali or somebody else. Throw them the max, see if you can get them or not. And roll into next year with Caitlin Clark, Nalissa Smith, ex-star wing, and Aaliyah Boston. Yeah. Let's go. Why not?
I love it. Some people seem to think that Deladon and Natasha Cloud are a package deal. I don't really know if there's any reason for that, or it's just kind of like a fun thing to imagine. But I like Cloud in Indiana, especially if they do get Caitlin Clark. We all can hype her up, but defensively, she's going to need some structure around her, right? So, get a great big point of attack defender like Cloud, and you have Aaliyah Boston patrolling the back line. You have a big forward defender in Nalissa Smith already, and she'll develop on that end as she goes. I like Cloud as the Fever's kind of big reach, and they have not a huge amount of money, but enough money to get one difference maker, and I think Cloud could be that player. But yeah, I mean, if they can reach higher and convince some other team to trade them something great, maybe Smith is kind of the thing you offer there. That could be cool, but probably more realistic is like you find your one target in free agency that's going to make a big impact. And I think with that they could make they're probably a playoff team. They could make some noise.
Yeah, they have like 10 players under contract already. Mm-hmm. Sabrina had this in her piece in her offseason primer. Caitlin Clark, let's just say Caitlin Clark turns pro, they draft her, and they will at 1. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hall, Nalissa Smith, and Aaliyah Boston is a starting 5 you already have under contract. Then you also already have Erica Wheeler, Grace Berger, Christy Wallace, Victoria Vivens, and Victoria Saxton already under contract. That's 10 players. Like, you don't have a lot of money at that point, but maybe you get a little weird. Let's get weird.
I could see them trading Erica Wheeler. I know she's a franchise favorite, and she's being probably a little bit overpaid. But once you have Clark, and I think Grace Berger, I know that's like a very, very deep cut here, but she's pretty solid. So she could be a backup point guard, I think.
Also, just another like very easy like in-state promotional thing with Grace Berger. Like that's just like catnip, Like there's some things they could do. I want them to get weird. Let's go for an Indian. You only live once, as the poet Drake said. All right, last one. Who can be a non-great superstar signing? Brendan, I think that Natasha Cloud, a name you already brought up, is my one for this. I just think her as a big defender that can go be on a really good team in a bunch of different spots, I think is my number one as far as that. But I think, if Jordan Canada, as you said, is going to be signed and traded, I think that's another one. Not quite a star, but someone that can go to a really good team and make a team better and fit into whatever they're building there. Like maybe her in Minnesota. Maybe her in some of these other spots. I think those are two names to me that stand out as non-stars, non-super name players that can go and make a big difference.
Yeah, so I'll throw out one that would kind of be a domino effect of some of the other moves we've talked about. If the Sun were able to get, whether it's Skylar or it's Elena Deladon, and they spend some of their open money and maybe check off some of their we need scoring, we need shooting boxes in the offseason, I could see Rebecca Allen becoming available, and she's a player who is a big shooter, who has evolved to kind of be even more than that, a similar maybe trajectory to like a Duncan Robinson that we've kind of seen in recent years, where she can put the ball on the ground now. She can make the right pass. She's big enough to kind of use her body to defend. She's a fit everywhere. So I could see her coming loose from the Sun, and if she joined a team that already had some talent and maybe some playmakers to get her the ball, like she would make them a lot better too. So that would be mine.
The last name, she wasn't on the questions list, but she's a former MVP who obviously had last year kind of go a certain way, and we haven't heard much from her. Do you have any predictions about what happens with Candace Parker?
Feels like she's going to come back, don't you think? Wouldn't we have heard it by now if she was going to retire?
Yeah, I feel like maybe, but also she should take as much time as she wants, I guess. If she wants to figure it out, she'll be 38 in April. Like, can't physically be the easiest thing after all the injuries and stuff.
No. I think if she were to come back, it probably would just have to be the Aces, in my opinion. I mean, unfinished business to some degree for her personally, right? And I think she's at a point in her life where she can take a pay cut, but I believe her wife is pregnant again. I don't know when they're due or anything like that, but she's building a family and starting her next career in media, so no one would falter at any moment if she chose to hang it up. But she seems like a freak competitor who can't step away, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Diana Taurasi is going to be like 50 years old still playing professional basketball. So like, who are we to like speculate about Candace Parker?
I mean, it's one of those things, right, where when you're able to kind of step away from going overseas, like some of these athletes have later in their careers. The WNBA season it's short. All things considered, right? It's not the commitment of like, some of these soccer players who are like 40 being relied upon way too much to go run around for 3 hours once a week and practice all the time and stuff.
And now you're seeing like ACL tears and like all these whack injuries. Like, maybe playing a ton of games for all the time and all these competitions is actually bad for your long-term sustainability.
Yeah, whereas at WNBA, it's like, play your 40 games, we'll manage your minutes, we'll take it easy in practice. You have a good medical staff and, come up here for 4 months and then do whatever you need to do after that. So I think that ask being a little less than some sports is part of why these players are able to keep it going. But yeah, I mean, also the Olympics, right? Is Candace doesn't have the greatest record with Team USA. I don't think she'll be in it, but some of these other players are probably thinking that. So we'll see.
Going to be interesting. All right, before we get to waving the flag to wrap up today's show, I want to tell you about our friends at Homage. Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company with NBA and WNBA licenses that use vintage-inspired designs to pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. Use our link below to make your purchase and support the Just Basketball Show. I have a super comfy Cleveland Guardians hoodie on from Homage right now. It's cold in Cleveland, Ohio. This is how I'm keeping warm and toasty on a Sunday. I have my eye, once it's back in stock, on the Guardians starter jacket they have. They did these amazing starter jackets. I'm going to get a Guardians one, and then I'm going to get a Browns one next fall when football season is back, and they do hopefully do that drop again. So use our link below. Buy yourself, for somebody who care about something nice. Support the Just Basketball Show via our friends at Homage. All right, waving the flag. Brendan, Orlando's in kind of a weird spot. They just lost to Philly in a game where they just kind of got handled and decimated and dominated. Yep. They've now, after that game, had lost 5 of 6, and 13 of their last 9 have fallen from as high as 2 in the East to in the play-in space, falling a little further back of that middle pack of Cleveland and New York and all those teams kind of in that cluster in the middle below the upper echelon. But you look at this game, you look at where they're at, what stands out to you about what's going on with Orlando right now?
I hate to use one game against a great team as like a prophecy of all these other changes that need to happen, but I just think they need to shuffle the lineup until Franz gets back. It feels a little too cute with the Caleb Houston and Chumo KK in the starting lineup. Like, the first quarter they outscored Philly in the first quarter at the end of it, but that's because the bench saved the day. The first few minutes, I believe Philly got out to a 10-2 or a 10-4 lead, and the offense just could not keep up. And Paolo had one of those weird games where he's not able to get enough shots up, which we've seen happen with him from time to time. But he also didn't get to the line or have a ton of assists. So, him and Suggs having to be the creators, even for a few minutes, they're not playing all those other starters a ton, but even to start these games out, it's putting them in too much of a hole. And then you look at the bench, and it's like Anthony Black, Joe Ingles, Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, even Mo Wagner, all guys who can kind of create a little bit of offense, all playing off the bench. So I don't know if it's start Cole Anthony until Franz gets back. I don't know if it's just put Fultz back where he kind of belongs here. And now that he's had a few games under his belt to get physically right, you put him there. I don't think they want to put Ingles in the starting lineup. And I get that. Their bench has been a huge strength. You don't want to just, again, over-panic here. But that was my thing watching this game, is I'm like, they're just shooting themselves in the foot from an offensive standpoint when that's already such an uphill battle for them most nights.
And where they are now is just they're in a really weird spot as far as the East goes. They're 2 ahead of the 9th-seeded Bulls, and ahead of the Hawks, ahead of the Nets, ahead of the Toronto, all that stuff. But they're now a full 4 games back of the 4th-seeded Cavs, who they play on Monday.
Yeah.
They're 3.5 back of the Knicks, who are 5th. And obviously there's a lot of season to go. We still have February and March and half of April to go before the seeding is fully solidified. But this does matter. I mean, they're 2 games back of Indiana and Miami at this point as well. They're not exactly operating.
They're a
from
play-in team now, right? Like, I think that's just sort of...
Yeah. That's kind
of what you have to plan for. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's okay. I think it's just we saw they're so young. It's year 2 for Paolo, all that stuff. But we saw, an upper echelon and, things go right that I think we got excited about it. And then things have obviously gone a certain way.
And it's a tough part of their schedule. I guess, that's something to say. In the past 2 weeks, they've lost by double digits 1, 2, 3 times in five losses. But within that, they actually beat Denver, if we can remember that game. But those 5 losses, have come to Minnesota, Miami, OKC. They beat New York, which is an impressive win. They lost to the Hawks, which was a crappy one. That was the Dejounte game winner. And then they got beaten to, crap by the Sixers in this game we're talking about. So those are competitive losses to good teams. But you just look at the point differential too. It's not like this team has like gotten the short end of the stick in clutch games or is having some sort of bad luck here. Like they're just not as consistently good as the teams ahead of them, and though the Knicks and the Pacers now have also made trades to get better. We expect the Heat might do that. We expect the Sixers might do that. So yeah, I think you're kind of probably back to where you maybe thought you'd be at the beginning of the season, right? If you're Orlando in your heart of hearts, and you just got to kind of put yourself in position to try to win those games and be as competitive as possible. But do you agree with me that they might need to shuffle this lineup up?
Yeah, I do. I think if you don't have Franz and, when he's back, maybe just answer some of these questions. But I think you kind of have to. This is one of the more offensively challenged teams. And even when we talk about how good Paolo is or Franz's upside, it is often so hard for those guys to score. It is often so hard for these guys just to function in a way that I think other potential superstars get the space to do so. I think it'd be worth it just to kind of goose yourself a little bit. And Cleveland's on a surge, but I don't think they should look at Monday's game against the Cavs and think, oh, we can't win that game with a good performance. They're going to be at home. You can win that kind of game, and if you look at their upcoming schedule, they're getting Cleveland on the second of back-to-back because they have Miami today as we're recording this. They get the Cavs on Monday.
And Franz is questionable for that game. I just want to throw in there. So if he ends up playing, we're recording this before the game. Just want to put that out there because we usually clip these Orlando segments. I don't want people to think we're dumb. We just, timing-wise, Franz might play, and maybe that, like you said, solves some of these problems. But their schedule, it does ease up too.
There's still some very tough games. I mean, they do have Memphis on Friday, which is after some time off, which is whatever the Grizzlies' magic line is, I might be tempted just to nuke the magic line after they've been off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then play a very poor Grizzlies team on Friday, even if it's on the road. Then they get Phoenix, they get Dallas, they get San Antonio, they get Minnesota, then they get the Pistons, and then you get the Spurs again in there. The reality is there are some easier games. There's just a lot of tough ones because the NBA has a lot of really good competitive teams, but you kind of just that tells us something at the very least about them. I do have if you were just going to put one guy from the bench into the starting lineup, is there someone you would point to as saying that's the guy that I want to slide up from the bench and put in the starting lineup?
Well, so I think the thing to say too is I kind of think that they should explore this even when Franz comes back, but I don't. Yeah, so I don't think you can take Suggs, Banchero, or Wagner out, right? Obviously. So no. It's what's your other guard? Or do you make a center change? I don't think the Goga Bitadze thing is as great as some people seem to, and he's kind of held on to that starting spot even with Wendell Carter in. I didn't hate the idea of a while ago when all three centers were playing well, why not start Mo Wagner and space out a little bit better? Even more than what Goga or Wendell, who can both technically knock down threes, but aren't really going to get anybody's help there. I just think they like the defensive stuff there, so maybe they just keep that. I would say the easiest thing is probably just to start Fultz and at least have a little bit of a guy who can take the ball out of these players' hands, including Suggs, who's had to do a little too much lately, and see if that can help. And then from there, maybe you try something else. I just don't think they want to start Cole or Ingles. And those are the two most obvious guys, but I just think they value their bench production too much. So they kind of want the discrepancy. It's just how much of it can you really handle when you're getting in these early holes every night.
Yeah, and I did the Anthony Black thought exercise, and it's okay, you'd have to, I think, up his minutes from 20 and get him up to more to 25, so it's not just a fake random starter kind of thing with him, I think, ultimately. So I think you're right. Fultz kind of would be the easiest one. And then you also maybe just collect more data on what he feels like with your core as you get closer to the deadline and in his looming free agency, which we talked about a little bit last week. We should just shout, Brennan, before we go. Tyrese Maxey was pretty fucking good to close out this game against Orlando. Embiid was great in this game as well, but Tyrese Maxey is kind of the one who slammed the door shut on Orlando to open the fourth quarter of this game. Yeah, and on the flip side of that, the maybe guy who, especially in those Maxey-only minutes, you would have hoped could go toe-to-toe was Cole Anthony, and
these bigger wing-heavy teams like Philly, he just isn't going to have it every night. It's a lot to ask of a small guy who doesn't get to the basket explosively to kind of score consistently against that type of a defensive team, and he didn't, and that's a big part of why Maxey was a team-high plus 17, Cole Anthony team worst minus 12, and things got so ugly. So, yeah, just I think a bad matchup, and, like, trying to deal with Embiid without a great center sucks. You know, Goga, like, okay, good luck, but still, like, you would have liked it to be a little more competitive at home.
Yeah. We're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Brendon Kleen. This has been a loaded, jam-packed, all over the map, just basketball show for January 22nd. Subscribe, rate, review if you have not already. Check out our TikTok. We talked about Thrive Fantasy earlier. My guy, your friend and mine, Colby Olsingen, will be doing TikToks over on our TikTok page 5 days a week during the week, going through props we like along the NBA. Winning record on the year for those keeping track at home, a.k.a. Colby and myself. But tune in later this week. We'll have another episode up. Some more slop probably to come. It's that kind of time of the year. We'll talk about the other waving the flag team, the Kings, in some capacity on that show. Much, much more to come here on the Just Basketball Show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.